It's April 5th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with early voting in South Korea. Early voting for next Wednesday's general election has now begun. 3,565 polling stations will be open nationwide from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on a Friday and Saturday. President Yoon Suk Yeol sat down with the head of a group representing absent trainee doctors for talks on the medical school quota hike. The 2-hour-long talks ended without a breakthrough. The United Nations Human Rights Council has passed a resolution addressing human rights issues in North Korea for the 22nd straight year, slamming the regime's systematic violations of human rights. Early voting has begun just a few hours ago for South Korea's general election. As of 8 a.m., the voter turnout at 1.2% across the country. This marks an increase of 0.3 percentage points compared to the same time during the previous general election in 2020, showing quite a strong turnout. Early voting will take place for 2 days starting on Friday, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. each day at 3,565 polling stations nationwide. Voters can cast their ballots at any polling station in the country, but should make sure to bring a form of ID, such as a passport, driver's license, or an ID card to vote. The head of the absent trainee doctors group finally sat down with President Yoon Suk Yeol for talks on the medical school seats hike. But after the talks, the group expressed their disappointment. Our Lee-Hoo has the details.
Talks in Seoul on Thursday between President Yoon Suk Yeol and the Korean Intern and Resident Association lasted for a little over 2 hours. Afterward, the presidential office said in a written statement that the president listened closely to the opinions of trainee doctors delivered by Park Dan, the head of KIRA. Yoon's office said that Park explained in detail about the poor working conditions experienced by trainee doctors, and the two exchanged opinions regarding the issue. The office also said the president will respect the opinions of trainee doctors in future discussions with the medical field about medical reforms. Park posted on social media after the meeting that there is no future for medicine in South Korea, but did not elaborate further. This follows President Yoon's public address on the issue earlier this week, where he highlighted his will to speak with the doctors. South Korea is nearly 50 days into a collective walkout by doctors in training, protesting the government's plans for medical reform and an increase in the country's total medical school enrollment quota by 2,000 a year, beginning with 2025 admissions. In mid-February, the Trainee Doctors Association released a statement demanding the government withdraw its plan, saying that they would limit public access to quality medical services. But the government has stood firm, saying that South Korea will need an additional 15,000 doctors by the year 2035. Lee-Hoo, Arirang News.
The UN Human Rights Council has once again put the spotlight on the human rights situation in North Korea, passing a resolution for the 22nd year in a row. Now, Pyongyang accused the West of fabricating issues inside the regime. Shin Se-byuk has more.
The United Nations Human Rights Council has passed a resolution addressing human rights issues in North Korea for the 22nd consecutive year. The Council unanimously approved the resolution without a vote during its 55th session at the UN office in Geneva on Thursday. China, Cuba, and Eritrea opted out the session, citing concerns about double standards on the resolution. The resolution strongly condemns North Korea's systematic violations of human rights and calls for urgent reforms. This year's resolution includes updates that reflect the South Korean government's concerns, including those urging Pyongyang to abolish or amend its laws that limit the freedom of thought, religion, and expression. It also strengthens clauses related to North Korea's fulfillment of its obligations under international human rights treaties. Another significant addition to this year's resolution is the request for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights to prepare a comprehensive report on the human rights situation in North Korea. This request comes a decade after the publication of the 2014 UN Commission of Inquiry report on North Korean human rights. The resolution also calls for North Korea to join key human rights treaties, such as the Convention Against Torture, and to honor its commitments to the international human rights conventions it is already a part of. Following the adoption, North Korea expressed strong objection, accusing the West of fabricating human rights issues in the regime.
The adoption of resolutions is repeated by the EU as an annual event, as the instigation of the United States. The so-called human rights issue forced by the West does not and cannot exist in the people-centered socialist system.
Meanwhile, South Korea's foreign ministry expressed its approval on Thursday, welcoming the decision and reaffirming its commitment to addressing North Korean human rights issues on an international level. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
U.S. President Joe Biden warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to protect civilians in Gaza or face consequences. The remarks come as an Israeli strike killed 7 aid workers from the World Central Kitchen in Gaza earlier this week. Lee Seung-jae reports.
During a 30-minute phone call between U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Biden called on Israel to protect civilians in Gaza, or there will be a change in the U.S.'s current supportive policy toward Israel. Biden also called on Israel to announce and implement a series of specific, concrete, and measurable steps to address civilian harm, humanitarian suffering, and the safety of aid workers. White House National Security Advisor John Kirby on Thursday confirmed Biden's remarks and reiterated the president's stance.
And the president laid out his significant concerns about the direction and where things are going. And quite frankly, laid out, as is clear in the readout, that we are willing to reconsider our own policy approaches here, dependent upon what the Israelis do or don't do.
The strong remarks from Biden come amid U.S. frustration over Israel's offensives in Gaza, which have killed a large number of Palestinian civilians. However, Biden's strongest warning yet followed an Israeli airstrike that killed 7 aid workers from the World Central Kitchen in Gaza on Monday. During his phone call, Biden also emphasized that an immediate ceasefire is essential to stabilize and improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza while protecting civilians. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Global oil prices continue to soar amid increased tensions in the Middle East. At the New York Mercantile Exchange on Thursday, the West Texas Intermediate for May delivery rose 1.4% to close at $86.59 a barrel, while Brent futures for June jumped 1.5% to settle at $90.65 a barrel. Both saw the highest price level since October 20th last year. Tension between Iran and Israel is considered the reason for the rise, with Iran accusing Israel of bombing its consulate in Syria and threatening a strong response. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that his military will operate against Iran and its proxies and will hurt those who seek to harm Israel. It's Arbor Day here in South Korea, when individuals and groups are encouraged to plant trees. For how to celebrate and get the most out of the day, we're joined by an environmental activist, Yeouido, this morning. Welcome to the program.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Please do introduce yourself as an activist at the Korea Federation of Environmental Movement. What do you do there?
Hi, my name is Haemin Cho. I'm an activist at KFEM Seoul. I work for biodiversity and nature restoration of our city.
Now, I'm sure you have your own story and journey that brought you to what you do now. What inspired you to become an environmental activist?
It was an ordinary day. I was walking by the river in my town and found an excavator running on water. I found it very strange, but it seemed like no one around me was concerned about it. Even though I was always worried about environmental issues like climate crisis, that day I realized that I wasn't paying attention to what was going on in my neighborhood. So there, I decided to take action to make a change for conserving the nature of this city, Seoul.
Now, what kind of actions have you taken to prevent our environment?
What kinds of? I do for campaigns or the press meeting, like that.
Planting trees is not easy or accessible for many of us, especially ordinary people, given that many of us do live in apartments with no backyards, as you know. What do you suggest we do or can do in our everyday lives?
Yeah, although it will be best if you can plant lots of trees in many spots to make the city or Seoul greener. Yeah, it's not easy for individuals to find an empty space to plant trees in the city. So instead, we suggest taking care of the trees we already have. You can easily see the street trees all around, and also you can see how little soil they have around them. And besides that, they are pruned way too much unnecessarily too often. So we can insist the city authorities to take care of trees, to do not cut down, or we can share such information on social media to raise fellow citizens' awareness. So I want to say to protect existing trees is as important as to plant new ones.
So preserving and protecting the ones we already have. Now, any fun campaigns or activities that you'd like to share to invite more people to become responsible citizens that help the environment like yourself?
Yes, it's not about planting trees, but I recommend you to bird watch near where you live. People usually refer to the city as space only for humans, but it's not true. Actually, the cities are where animals and humans coexist. If you start bird watching, you will be surprised how many species live in your own town. In my opinion, by realizing such biodiversity, you will easily understand that we need to protect the nature in our city.
Right. As humans, don't just own the nature and the earth. It belongs to all the creatures on this planet. Now, is there any place or area that particularly needs our special care or attention or holds it dear to your heart?
I want to say about the Namsan mountain in Seoul. Recently, the mayor of Seoul said he would build a cable car in Namsan mountain, even though there's one functioning already. The real problem is that this plan is being carried out without any environmental effect evaluation. In Namsan mountain, there are old trees, lots of frogs, salamanders, birds, and so on, but these are all being ignored now. So we are gathering people who want to stop this under the name of Friends of Namsan. Anyone who is interested can join us.
All right, thank you for that recommendation. And also, thank you so much for your time this morning. You have a great day.
Thank you so much.
The much-beloved cherry blossoms are back in town, officially opening springtime here in the country. Our Choi Soo-young was out and about in the capital Seoul to share some of the beautiful scenes.
The scent of spring has returned. This year, many people have been waiting for the cherry blossoms to bloom. It was expected that this would happen about a week earlier than last year, starting around mid-March. But the weather at the time, including sudden cold snaps and spring rain showers, delayed the blossoms. As a result, they actually bloomed 4 to 5 days later than usual. Despite being a weekday, as Thursday, from even early morning, many visitors were around enjoying the onset of spring.
This is my first day here, and this is a very beautiful place to see the flowers, and there's no such a big place like in Taiwan, so yeah, I'm very enjoying it.
Until last week, the weather was a bit cold, so even if the flowers bloomed, it would have been difficult to enjoy them. But now that the weather has warmed up and the flowers are in full bloom, it's even nicer to come out and see them.
Many cherry blossom spots nationwide had planned festivals for the end of March. The Yeouido Cherry Blossom Festival was also originally scheduled to start on March 29th and end of April 4th. However, due to the late blooming, a change in plans became necessary.
Seoul city officials announced that they would extend traffic restrictions on nearby roads in Yeouido until next Monday, April 8th.
Facilities such as shelters for picnics, photo zones and temporary health centers set up for the festival will also remain open until then, providing convenience and rest spaces for visitors. The Korea Meteorological Administration has forecast that, despite the weather having had a significant impact so far, people will be able to enjoy cherry blossoms in full bloom this weekend. For those who want to know the best spots to enjoy the stunning views, use Exit 1 of National Assembly Station or Exit 2 of Yeouido Station and Subway Line 5. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Apples here in South Korea have been one of the most pricey fruits because of such unstable weather. And apparently the impact of the changing climate on apple harvest will not end anytime soon. Our An Sung-jin went to check out how farms are looking to adapt.
Apples in South Korea are the most expensive in the world. According to Numbeo, an online database which measures consumer prices, apples in South Korea are about $6.82 a kilo, which is much higher than the price of apples in the US or Japan. With the sudden change in the temperature, apple flowers died out before blossoming, leading to a drop in the amount of apples harvested last year and a surge in apple prices. Due to climate change, temperatures have been rising, and according to the Environment Ministry, South Korea has seen a temperature rise of 1.6 degrees compared to 110 years ago. This is higher than the world average temperature rise of 1.09 degrees. As a result, the most suitable environment for growing apples has been moving northward up the peninsula from the southern provinces. Farms have been adapting to this change by integrating technology. This is one of the country's first smart farms located in Andong, Gyeongsang-mukdo Province. Funded by the Agricultural Ministry, it uses ICT tools and AI technology to monitor individual farms and prevent damage to apples from pests.
Using my phone app, I can easily control the farm's environment. With the AI camera, I get to monitor the growth of apples, detect pests, and prevent frost.
These farms also have their own smart irrigation and fertilization system, which controls the amount of water used. The control center gathers weather data such as humidity and land temperature and tracks the plants and analyzes them for any issues over time.
We provide farms with the necessary data. However, it's the individual farms that make the final decision on what to do. It's important that we continue to expose the rural population to the concept of smart farming.
The government is also addressing the change in harvesting conditions for apples by developing new apple varieties.
We're working on cultivating different varieties of apples, such as those with good coloring, green and yellow apple varieties, and those apples that can grow well despite temperature changes during the flowering season. To maintain efficient productivity, harvesting apples with machines and automation will become more common.
Land that is suitable to grow apples is diminishing, but smart farms like these allow apples to be harvested despite the changing environment. Now, this smart farm, empty at the moment, is expected to see flowers blossom by the end of April and apples to be harvested between October and November. An Sung-jin, Arirang News, Andong.
Good morning. I'm Kim Si-young, and now we turn off to stories from around the world. Russian drones hit 2 apartment buildings and a power plant in Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv, early on Thursday, killing at least 4 and injuring 12 people. Ukraine said that Russia launched at least 20 Shahed drones overnight on Thursday, 11 of which were shot down by the Ukrainian military. Kharkiv Mayor Ihor Terekov said 3 of the dead were emergency vehicle drivers who died in a repeat strike on a residential block after they arrived for a rescue mission. Terekov added that the 4th victim, a 69-year-old woman, was killed by a missile strike inside a building. Drones also hit a thermal power plant in Kharkiv. The country's energy ministry said about 350,000 residents had their power cut. Ukraine's second-largest city lies approximately 30 kilometers from the Russian border and has been heavily bombed since the outbreak of war more than 2 years ago. British multi-billionaire Joe Lewis has been fined $5 million for insider trading. He was also given 3 years probation at a hearing in New York on Thursday. Prosecutors said that the former Tottenham Hotspur owner tipped off his friends, girlfriend and 2 of his private pilots with inside information on 4 publicly traded companies. 87-year-old Joe Lewis pleaded guilty earlier in January to 1 count of conspiracy and 2 counts of securities fraud. At the sentencing, Lewis said, "I'm ashamed, and I'm here today because I made a terrible mistake." One of the 500 richest people in the world, Lewis built his estimated $6.2 billion fortune from trading and investments and is the founder of the investment firm Tavistock Group. Off the coast of the Canary Islands, the Spanish Coast Guard have rescued 73 migrants from a wooden boat at sea. The boat was towed by the Coast Guard on Thursday to the island of Gran Canaria. Spanish Coast Guard personnel were seen attending to injured migrants and a child. Frontex, the EU border agency, said the route to the Canary Islands currently has the largest traffic of irregular migration from West Africa into Europe. According to the Spanish Interior Ministry, from the beginning of the year until March 31st, some 13,115 migrants have made the dangerous journey, compared to 2,178 in the same period the previous year. Boxing legend Muhammad Ali's boxing trunks from his Thrilla in Manilla fight against Joe Frazier is set to go under the hammer at an estimated value of $4 to $6 million. According to Sotheby's, Ali's trunks from the October 1975 fight in the Philippines will be up for auction until April 12th. The white satin boxing trunks, featuring a black trim at the waistband and black piping down the sides, are signed by Ali in black Sharpie and inscribed by Drew Bundini Brown, who used to be Ali's cornerman. Muhammad Ali, who was known for his record-setting boxing career and showmanship, died in 2016 at age 74.
Good morning. It's Arbor Day here in Korea, waking up to a cloudy but pleasant spring day. Be aware of big gaps in temperatures and dress accordingly to avoid catching a cold. Many seem to coming down with a cold around this time. And especially with a longer spell of spring cold and wet weather this season we had, also the reason for late spring blossoms, it almost made it feel like we jumped right into jacket-free afternoons. Those in southern provinces will notice a rise in highs, while it's the other way around in the capital region. Meanwhile, Jeollabuk-do will see spotty rain through the first half of the day, while cloudy skies will turn much brighter as the day goes on today. There seemed to be less traffic already in the capital area yesterday, as the spring blossom season is in full swing in much of the country. Guessing many people are taking extra days off to enjoy nature's beauty. Good news, the weather will cooperate for any spring activities this weekend nationwide. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back next Monday at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.